Good afternoon. Welcome to EduSet Network. Friend, as you know, we are discussing communication theory. Yesterday we discussed the introductory part of it. What was the communication theory? What does it mean? It's a range of issues it covers. Today we'll move further and we'll try to have a specific topic like sociological theory. We'll also talk about the different theory comes under the view of sociological theory, like user and gratification theory, agenda setting theory, dependency theory, and cultivation theory. We'll talk in details and we'll try to understand its impact and how a media person or a communication expert, a scholar, can use this theory for the benefit of their research on the subject issue. So, for discussion on this topic, we have invited here a very eminent scholar of communication theory, Dr. Saswati Goswami. She teaches in Indian Institute of Mass Communication, a premier institution on the country. She is associate professor there, and she has keen interest on political and development communication. So on her behalf, I welcome for the EduSet lecture on the topic communication theory. Welcome.
Thank you so much. We had a good discussion yesterday. I tried to tell you what was communication and is communication, what are the differences between various forms of communication, and a little bit of what is communication theory. Just to make us a little bit, just get back onto the track, I would like to tell you what does theory exactly do? Why is theory important? Theories actually help us to make sense of what we are experiencing. You know that the television is omnipresent everywhere. It's omnipresent. Newspaper is available every day. And what exactly does it do to us? How do we react to this particular media and this particular communication? When it comes to interpersonal or intrapersonal communication, we actually don't make that much of differences between what is being communicated and why is being communicated, because it's almost obvious at that time. But when it comes to mass communication, we are very worried how the communication pattern actually influences us, and how does it manufacture a sort of discussion in the society. So, we will like to start with the sociological theory. And what are sociological theories? When we say sociological theory, there are four that are more important for us. One is agenda setting, uses and gratification, cultivation, and dependency. Sociological theories are typically built on the theories and ideas of previous sociologists. So, it has a total root in the sociological faculty of sociology. It's built on scientific research, the desire to share, publish, ongoing dialogue, all this frame out the sociological theories, and focused on structural relationship like individual in society, human being as social being, rather than personal experiences. All this comes into making it a sociological theory, because it relates to the society. Of course, personal concerns directed towards understanding social issues is also very important when we talk about sociological theory. I would like to define a little bit about what is sociological theory. It is defined as a set of interrelated ideas that allow for the systematization of knowledge of the social world. In a sense, we are thinking about the social world. And what is a social world? It comprises of the political and the economic as well as the geographical world too. So, in this case, social is the reference point, and from there we go around all the areas. This knowledge is then used to explain the social world and make predictions about the future of the social world. Of course, not all theories necessarily conform to this idea, neither knowledge, it is not about knowledge versus predictions. Test of time is also very applicable, because A theory might be relevant today, but it might not be as much relevant later on. So, now I would like to quote Albert Bandura's social learning theory, where he observes that people learn from one another via observation, imitation and modeling. These are very three important issues he talks about. The social learning theory talks about observation, imitation and modeling. People learns through all these three processes. The theory has often been called the bridge between the behaviorist and cognitive learning theories, because it encompasses attention, memory and motivation. All these three are very much important as a bridge between the behaviorist and the cognitive theory. Let us now go directly to the agenda setting theory. It is the first systematic study of agenda setting and was conducted by Malcolm McComb and Donald Shaw during the American presidential campaign of 1968. What they did was they studied the behavior pattern of 100 undecided voters of Chapel Hill, that is an area in the US, and these 100 voters were not very sure about how to go and vote, why to vote, on what issues to vote. So, these two theorists studied them, and they did a content analysis of the media, and then they came to this conclusion that actually the issues that were highlighted by the media was the issues on the basis of which this 100 undecided voters eventually voted. That is, it showed that undecided people's decision eventually gets influenced by the media. This theory through content analysis shows that new media influences the agenda of public issues. That is, the news media always make the people aware of the issues which will be important for them. The assumption is that media don't tell people what to think, instead tells what to think about, which topic and what subject. So, they sets the agenda. And the main assumptions of this theory is that the press and the media do not reflect reality, they filter and shape it. Now, it is debatable what is reality, because reality for you might not be the reality for me. It is very subjective in a way, and of course, it is very society centric, like the reality of one society will be different from the other, one individual will be different from the other. So, media concentration on few issues and subjects leads the public to perceive those issues as more important than other issues. So, even if you reflect on what you are watching on TV or reading on your newspaper, you will see that certain issues are picked up, and then every day there is a coverage of that issue, there is a debate on this issue, there is an extensive writing on this issue, and that issue becomes very important for the entire public. So, that is what this theory assumes too. Thus, agenda setting describes media as a very powerful tool of influence. It is very influential. Now, just to cite an US example, you might remember President Obama's birth certificate issue, where his entire ethnicity was debated, so many things were debated. That scandal we know because media thought that it was important for us to know. And if you look at the Indian media, you will see that such equivalence can be found in our media too. Look at the day-to-day newspaper, television, as I said, and you will see that certain issues become so important, and you behave like even I behave that yes, this is important, I want to follow this topic. So, I start following, and the agenda of the media is set. Now, there are various levels of agenda setting. The first level refers to the media using objects or issues to influence the people what the people should think about. The first level is to start using those objects or issues which will make the people think on it. The second level decides what part of the subjects are important. Like there is an issue which has too many, not too many, maybe 3 dimension to it. The media will pick up one dimension and project and and then discuss on it, and the rest of the dimensions will be obliterated, and we will never talk about it, neither will be the media talking about it. The second, but how does it affect us? Okay, fine, the media produces something, media tells us something, but does it affect us? If you sincerely look at it, you will see that it does affect us. Because why? We all consume media in some form or the other. Forget about only news media. What about the entertainment media? What are the cinemas doing? Why are we reacting to the cinemas? We are reacting because it actually touches us. In some form or the other, we are touched by the media. Therefore, we all experience media's agenda setting. The relevance of information to a person and level of uncertainty determine a person's need for orientation too. That is very important, because that information might not be relevant to someone, he will skip to a different topic. But those people who think that this is relevant to them, they will immediately get hooked to it. And of course, if you are uncertain about whether it is important or not, you might skip and go to the next program, but you might also get stuck to that program too. People with a high need for orientation are more likely to be influenced by the media. Some people are pristine plates. They want to get information in any form they can get. So what they do they will consume whatever is given without any without a pinch of salt, and those people gets influenced, and the agenda setting is perfectly applicable to them. However, some critics claim that evidences are insufficient to prove that the agenda setting theory holds water. Some are not very, they say that it's okay, the agenda setting is done, but the amount of influence that agenda setting has, that this particular theory says about, is debatable. For example, Dennis McQuell, an eminent scholar of communications, argues that the agenda setting theory is within the status of a plausible but unproven idea. I am not going to discuss extensively about that criticism, because it will take up the entire class, but I would suggest you can read Dennis McQuell's book, which says called, I had got the name for you, Mass Communication Theory. It has gone into almost the 5th edition now. If you read that book, you will know his criticism. So, basic criticism was that it is possible, it is plausible, but idea is not that much proven. There are still gap in between. So, next time you consume media, I would suggest take a look at the stories being highlighted. You look at it, and then you try to understand how it had influenced you. If it has influenced you in positive way or in negative way, you see why was it positive, why was it negative, and have you cross-checked the facts told to you by the media? We generally don't, but I would suggest, just if you want to look at the agenda setting pattern of the media, have a question yourself, look at a story, follow the story, and see how much you are influenced. So, next, I hope you have been clear about agenda setting theory a little bit. I would like to go into the uses and gratification theory, and this originated in the 1970s as a reaction to traditional mass communication research. It emphasized the sender and the message and stressed the active audience and users instead. It was more looking at the people, not at the media. This theory believed that more than the media, it is the people who are more important than the media. This theory was propounded by Elihu Katz, Dennis McQuell, and Michael Gurewitz. This theory studied how the audience utilized the media, and they did a audience study, and then they found out various sets of gratification. According to this theory, people get gratification because of their cognitive needs, that is, the urge to acquire information. Then affective needs, the emotional and entertainment values, personal integrative needs, strengthening credibility, confidence and status. See, certain programs are there which makes you feel, okay, I know how to behave in a society, I know what is good in a society, what is the fashion trend, what is the important book right now being read, and what is the even the food that people consume. All this makes supposedly strengthen the credibility and the confidence of the person. So, this particular need is gratified by the media. Then social integrative need, strengthening contacts with family. Sometimes like I will just cite an Indian example. When there is a festivity in India, we have hundreds of programs running simultaneously, various media, even on print, about that particular festivity. It makes us feel that this festival is very important, and as a festival, the main issue of festival is to strengthen the family values and the bonding of the family. That particular necessity is gratified. Then of course, tension release needs. We need escape and diversion from the very rigorous life we have. Sometimes we have a very dull life, so want escape and diversion, and that particular urge and is also gratified, and people get gratification out of the media on these various levels. I will just repeat once: cognitive needs, affective needs, personal integrative needs, social integrative need, and tension release needs. This is actually a lot to discuss, but then this is how we are gratified by the media. You use the media because of these necessities and you are gratified. Assumptions of this theory is that it explains how individuals use media communication to gratify their needs. What do people do with the media? This is what it assumes, that okay, fine, the media is there, but what does the people do? Are the people only passive user of media, or there is a very active cooperation of the people when it comes to the media? It also the assumption is theory assumes that to discover underlying motives for individuals' media use. They want to discover, the theory wants to discover the underlying motives of the individual's media use. Why an individual uses the media, and for what purpose, and how long. This is also very important. One is gratified by one particular program or one particular say print news or a radio program for some time, but it might not gratify that person's needs for a longer time. To identify the positive and the negative consequences of individual media use, that is, how do we use it? Is it positive or is it negative? See, there had been many cases in India where we had blamed media for generating certain ideas in the society. It has been made mandatory in cinemas right now to have a anti-tobacco scroll on the screen when one of the actors are smoking, because it is believed that this particular act of the actor might make the person feel the necessity of smoking, and that particular idea will come up and he will feel gratified by the media and even justify his own habit of smoking. So, this is a negative effect they want to do away with, and there are many positive values which the media actually has on all human beings. As 1960s was the time that the first generation grew up with access to, 50s was when television came up in US, and by 60s there was a generation who had already consumed media for 10 years. It became increasingly apparent to media theorists that audiences made choices about what they did when consuming text. It's not that because it's there on the television you watch it. You actually make a choice. Even if you look at yourself, you will see that you make a choice what program to watch and which newspaper to read. Far from being passive mass audiences, they were made up of individuals that actively consume text in different way. So, we cannot think that media just bombards us with ideas. In fact, what media does, what the person does is he selects and picks his own media and consumes accordingly. So Lasswell had suggested that media had the following functions for individuals and society, which is very much relevant to this theory. So I would like to just give you a little brief. The surveillance function, we all the time maintain our individual information flow from media. Correlation, trying to correlate disparate issues or issues which I had seen but I could not correlate. That might be the media might be easily making us correlate that program, that particular issue. Then entertainment, which is obviously no one can deny. We consume media a lot for entertainment. And of course, cultural transmission, the heritage transmission of one culture to the other, and of course, making us aware of our own cultural heritage and history. These were the four things for which people used media, and this was the five functions of media for individual and society, as Lasswell said. And this is where we can always relate it to the uses and gratification theory. In 1974, Balmer and Katz expanded this theory and published their own. This theory again stated that there has been a movement of this theory from initially it was started by three theorists, where of course Katz was one of the theorists, but then Balmer and Katz again redefined the theories and it published as a different way. They published it in a different way. These theories stated that individuals might choose and use a text for the following purposes. They want diversion. So adding to it, of course, it is not much different from tension release needs gratification. That is also a sort of diversion. Personal relationships, to using the media for emotional and other interaction. In modern life, we often see that our dinner time transforms into television time. That is how we have been substituting family life with media life. And in that, if you look at the television now in India, you will see that is a very much a reality show time. So we are almost as if trying to substitute reality shows with our family life. Then of course the urge to have a personal identity. Some text does reflect your personality, and you have a learning behavior, and you extract values from the text. You try to see yourself there. So this is why also a lot of individuals might choose a media. And then surveillance is again, they had picked it up from Lasswell and said that informations which could be useful for living, like I would like to know where is the traffic jam today, or I might like to know what is the financial news because I am into finance, and I might like to know where is the off, like where do I get the best bargain for the holiday shopping. And so many other things, like where is the which movie show is on in which hall, and then of course these are very minor things that the media gives us, but this is very important for us. So you will see, if you pick up a newspaper, go from the first page to the last, you will see such information built into the newspaper. These are very small, but this keeps us very much informed, and we keep a surveillance of what's happening where. I know I am rushing you through a number of theories, but then of course I think this is good enough for your basics, and of course I will suggest a few books to read once I am done with my theories, and that will give you more extensive idea about the theories. Let me go into cultivation theory now. As I said, 1950s was the time when television came to in US and it became a way of life. I have to, before I forget, I like to tell you one thing, is that television, when television grew in the US, it became very important important media for the theorists to talk about and think about, because television was supposedly a very revolutionary media which had affected people. People got totally hooked to it, and one thing with television we all know is that you sit in front of the TV and watch it. So your attention to the television is total. But when it comes to a print say a newspaper, you pick it up, in between someone is talking to you, you can close it down, talk, discuss and again come back to the newspaper. Similarly, with radio, what you do is you pick up the radio, because of the transistor revolution that we had, you pick up the radio and take it everywhere. So, you are not rooted. The relationship of the TV and the viewer was such that people were, the theorists were very much interested to know how it changes the person, how it affects the person and the individual and social life. So, this widespread influence of TV made scholars like George Gerbner concerned about the phenomenon. This is a picture of George Gerbner. I would like to show you. Yeah, this is George Gerbner, and what he did was, his theory was called ultimately Cultivation Theory. Gerbner was the dean of the Annenberg School of Communication at the University of Pennsylvania in the mid 1960s. We have, and that particular school of communication still has a very strong legacy of communication theorists. We have Monroe E. Price right now there. He had written extensively on Indian media policy and he often comes to India. This theory assumed that a television is responsible for shaping and cultivating viewers' conception of social reality. Now, what is social reality? Social reality as such is what the society is immediately showing you. And now what we do is, we try to see the society through television. We cultivate the viewers' conceptions and we are responsible. Television is now responsible in doing that. The combined effect of massive television exposure by viewers over time subtly shapes the perception of social reality for individuals and ultimately for our culture as a whole. What he wants to say is that the amount of cultivation done on the person will affect the society as a whole and eventually our culture. I will tell you a small example. We have seen a huge boom in the marriage industry right now. Wedding season is also a marketing season. If you look at the attire or the dress of the bride and the bridegroom in India across many cities, I am not talking of the villages, of course, those cities where television and cinema is more prominently, which is more accessible, you will see that the dress code of the bride and the groom had grown almost homogeneous. The same dress, a North Indian particular specific dress worn by the North Indian, you will find in a Bombay wedding. So you will find in a Guwahati wedding or also in a Kolkata wedding or Gujarat wedding. It is almost getting homogeneous. So a cultural change is coming, just encompassing and going into our roots. This has been an effect of the television and the cinema, and it has almost been accepted cultural change that has been achieved. Mass media cultivate attitudes and values which are already present in our culture, that is true. But the media maintain and propagate these values amongst members of a culture, thus binding it together. Television tends to cultivate middle of the road political perspectives, and that is called mainstreaming. This is where the television has a stronger role. Point is, I have a culture that, and our culture is picked up by the television, shown, and we have a special bonding because of that cultural heritage that has been shown. But because one culture is never one, we have multiple faces of a culture. A single, say a state cannot be of one culture, it has many cultures, many ethnic communities living. That is true for India. I am trying to give you examples from India. So, we have many ethnic communities living, they have their own cultural heritage, and you cannot show everyone. So, you do a middle of the road sort of a communication which makes you feel that this is what I should be. So, every small culture comes into the mainstreaming portion. So, this is where a mainstreaming or a middle of the road culture is cultivated. Of course, this theory is not out of criticism. Critics claim that Gerbner did not take into account that a person's demographics might have an effect on how they feel about the world. So, it is not that the person can be just influenced and he is a clean slate, or she is a clean slate, and a TV just goes on writing on it. His demographic values, or maybe you can simplistically call it social conditioning that he or she had got, will have an effect about how he or she feels about the world. Gerbner also focused on television in general instead of thinking that about specific television shows, because it is not that television in general can create cultivate one culture or cultivate one idea. There are few television programs which becomes more effective on the people's mindset rather than all television as a whole. So, the criticism is that he should have looked at few programs selectively and looked at it. And it is criticized that he ignores complexity of human nature. So, society's views can be affected by other variables. A society, as I said, is not a homogeneous community, homogeneous entity. Society comprises of many class, caste in Indian system, religion, gender. All this makes a society a very complex and what to say. Society becomes very complex, and so everybody cannot be affected by one single television program or in the same way. So, without looking into all those complexities, we cannot say that society entirely is affected in a homogeneous way. There is no causal relationship between societal news and TV, because what happens is what TV picks up also is a reflection of the society. It is not that the television channel just picks up something because they want to. They also have studied the television society, and they know what will touch whom. Then positive effects are not analyzed. What Gerbner did was, he was very critical about television. So, the positive effects had not been analyzed. Light viewers also have impact because of television. Some of the viewers are very heavy, so they are totally affected, their individuality is changed, their culture is changed, and it has a huge impact on our society. But the light viewers, the viewers who may watch a program or two in a day or maybe in a week, they also have an impact because of the TV, which he had never studied. And he believes, his theory believes, that audience is passive, which is as the other theory that we had just discussed, uses and gratification theory. They say that audience is not passive, they know what they want to consume, and that is why they consume. So, the criticism of Gerbner's theory is that he is thinking that audience are passive audience, they do not decide, TV decides what they want to see. He does not look into the demographic specificities of the population. He does not look at the complexities of the society. A society comprises of so many complex individuals and ethnic communities and so on and so forth. And of course, he does not look at the positive effects of television. Lastly, I would like to tell you a little bit about dependency theory. Dependency theory was propagated by Sandra Ball-Rohek and Melvin DeFleur. It was in 1976. If you see, these theories had all these sociological theories had its presence from 60s to 70s. Why it happened, I will come to it later on. According to this theory, there is an internal link between media, audience and large social system. This theory tries to relate media, audience and social system together. So, it is almost a takeoff from uses and gratification theory and cultivation theory. They were trying to develop it further. Extensive use of media generates dependent relation in audience. The audience starts depending on the media because of the use of extensive media. Extensive use of media, sorry. I would like to ask you one thing. How many of you are habituated in watching a television serial? You will see, if you are habituated, you won't like to miss a single episode. Your time of that day becomes dependent on the television. You want to know what happened next. That dependency is ascertained, and the audience become very much hooked to the program because of the extensive use of media. The dependency theory is expanded from, as I said, theory of uses and gratification, but it has some of the qualities of cultivation theory too. Now, how does dependency work? It works in various levels. One is the individual level. An individual will be dependent on the media if it satisfies him or her. Nobody can make you dependent until and unless you feel satisfied by the media. Then societal level. It happens actually, this societal dependence on media happens during when there is a collective social change happening. Say, election time, you are undecided what to do, whom to vote. In this particular time, you depend on media, you consume media and try to know whom to vote. So, the media dependency is dramatically increased. Even there is a happening, we had so many things recently, not every time, not only recently, every time there is an issue which touches the entire society, we get hooked to the media to see what's happened. Like day before yesterday, there was a stampede and some people were killed. It was a pathetic death of so many people in who went for a Kumbh Mela, and we have been, because it had changed the life of so many people and it affects all of us, we have been depending on the media to give us the details of what happened. And think of those people who are directly affected by that incident. They will be more dependent on the media to inform them of what had happened. So, when there is massive something happening in like during now the budget session is coming, you will see that we will be wanting the television media to tell us what's happening, the print media to tell us what's happening, what will be the effect of the budget. We'll want a lot of analysis of it. We'll like to know what's happening after this. So, in this particular bigger areas of discussion, it has a societal level dependency. Then active level. Active audience always depends on the media and uses media according to their individual needs. And other factors such as economic conditions, society and culture, all this comes together. If alternative source fulfill the need, it will decrease the media dependence. Now, let me explain that a little bit. Say I want an information from the media. I got to know something had happened somewhere. I switch on the television, scream through this, go on through various TV channels. I am waiting for the news to come up, but I am not getting it. I will go on watching one channel after another, channel after another. Now that I have access to online news, I will even now cross check with the online news and try to get the information. If the online news is giving me the real story or immediate story, I will switch off the television. Say I do not get anything about the information about the incident online or on television, I will wait for the next day's newspaper. So, what I do is, because I am an active audience, I want to, my dependence on the media will obviously dependent on how much the media satisfied my urge to know. So, if an alternative source is available, say then I get to know, I meet someone who has come back from that incident. Immediately I will get the immediate information from that person who had been an eyewitness rather than going to the media. And I later on I will totally give up my dependence on television on that particular issue, and I will only talk to that person and get the information, and I will tell the rest of the people, see whatever the media says, my friend has been was there when this happened. So, I know what exactly had happened. So, I am not depending on the media. So, this active audience has a different level of dependence. So, these are the 3 levels of dependence: individual level, societal level and active level. Now, how is dependence created? Following are the steps of creating dependence. How it is created is, media attracts individuals by offering the content which is able to fulfill their needs for understanding, entertainment and information. See, we always say information and entertainment are the main objective of the media. They want to inform and entertain people. Of course, along with entertainment and information, we also develop our understanding. So, what the media does is, they pick up an issue, get you the detailed information, try to make it cover it in some entertaining entertaining way, and also try to enhance your understanding. How does the understanding increase? They will call some experts to the studio on that issue. They will analyze the matter. They will call people who are against that issue and let you know about what the issue is really and the other side of the story, and likewise they will develop your understanding. So, the media attracts us by offering that. We watch certain debates and discussion because we know that the anchor will call a multiple number of people. I am particularly talking about television because most of these theories had taken off from the phenomenon of television viewing. Cognitive motivations of media encourage the individuals to maintain the level of attention, and effective motivation serves the individuals to enhance the level of satisfaction. Let me explain this again. There is a cognitive motivation, and that cognitive motivation of media will encourage the person to watch it more, and it will attract the attention of the individual, and that will translate into effective motivation, and the individual's level of satisfaction will come up. So, because your cognitive and your effective motivation are satisfied, you get dependent on that media for your information, your understanding and your entertainment. Both cognitive and effective motivation intensifies the audience to higher level of involvement to sustain the dependence. So, both the motivation impresses upon the audience, and their higher level of independence is sustained and created. Once you are hooked to, as I said, you are hooked to a program, you do not want to miss it. Forget about the television serials, the reality show that we see, the talent search program that we see. We want to know who had won, because our cognitive motivation and our effective motivation is brought up to that level, that where our dependence is sustained. So, when we have a gala finish to a talent search program, we have a longer program, it will be 2 hours program, and still our dependence starts that we want to know who has won that program. We will continue with that program for 2 long hours. I hope I had been able to give you a little brief about these theories. I just wanted you to know why these theories had developed during that period of time. As I said, I had in fact said in between, but I would like to conclude by saying one thing, that 60s and 70s, the effect of television was very, very strong in the Western world. Television had almost obliterated the other media. Radio was used mostly for songs and driving on the road purpose. Television had become a sort of a family member, and that had created a huge problem in the social fabric of the society. the fabric on which a society stands, the family fabric. So, theorists were very awestruck by this effect of television. Before television, print was there, radio was there, it did not have that much of a drastic change, did not make that much of a drastic change in a society. So, but television had given it has in fact swept along the entire fabric of the society and made it a different sort of a society. And that is why people were intrigued, the theorists were intrigued, and they wanted to know what is this phenomenon called television. And that is why all these 4 sociological theories of communication had come up, and a lot of debates were generated, and there were many articles being published saying that television should be completely erased out from the family. People became finicky about having a television. They didn't know how to get back the children to the playground because they were more hooked to the television program than to outdoor games, and obesity had increased. So many things had changed in the society that people were thinking on this particular phenomenon, and thus we have the theories now. This is all that I can tell you about sociological theory today, and next class we will be moving to the next theories.
As you talked about the different sociological theory, what I feel these all are related to society, but there are one other aspect, the impact of the media. So when we come to the sociological theory and impact study, we find there are certain similarity and dissimilarity. How can you make that this is the impact study as the theory for the impact study different and sociological theory?
See, it is basically it depends on the researcher which theory he wants to actually use.
Okay, so it varies from case to case.
Case to case, because you want to say this is a phenomenon. Say during one incident in our society, the usage of television was such and such. Now, you want to only look at the usage of television, you can use the use and gratification theory. But you want to look at the impact of that particular program, then of course you will go into impact studies. But I will have to tell you one thing, nothing is airtight, no theory is airtight.
Okay, giving one example, can you make it clear to a student then in this circumstance we will use this theory, in this circumstance we will this theory, like as you explained that here I will use the sociological and impact other theories.
See,
so one example so that a student can get clear, sir.
That's true.
Yeah.
Let me give you an example of, say you want to analyze the impact of Verma committee report that had come up.
Okay.
Fine. That's the latest report that we have. It was based on a very horrendous happening in our society. You want to look at the incident and the report. You will obviously and say the usage of that report in media. How the media had reflected on that report. Okay. Then obviously you would like to use the dependency theory, or maybe you can always use the uses and gratification theory. You can talk to 10 people saying that are you satisfied with how the media had dealt with the Verma committee report.
Okay.
That will be one theory that you use is their uses and gratification, where they are happy with the program that was being mounted by the television. But you want to know the impact of that particular report on the television program. You will do an impact study.
Okay.
You will pick up those 10 programs, the television channels, the 3 television channels, 10 programs they had done on Verma committee report. You will analyze the content of their reporting, and then you will see how they have how this had impacted, whether the Verma committee had changed the tone of the television channel on analyzing that issue.
Okay.
So there you can use the impact study.
Okay.
So it will be, I would suggest when you look at any incident that you want to say your research itself, you will have to first ask yourself, why do you want to do the research? Why you want to do the research, and why exactly, and what you want to, this is where a hypothesis come into place, that this is my hypothesis, that out of my research this will come. So, your hypothesis tool should have a theoretical framework. So, you have to look at various, you might not at all want to do a sociological study, you might want to do a political economic study or a normative study. So, then of course, you will use the theory of that particular framework and adapt it to your situation.
Okay, this is about the sociological theory of the one incident report and portrayal in the media. And when we try to understand this report in a framework of normative theory, how will you explain?
I think I better tell them about the normative theory, and then when I come to the normative theory, let me tell them, I'll keep it in mind that I'll explain it with this example, that how I deal with Verma committee report and the normative theory. Then it will be more easier for the students to understand.
Okay. Another question I'd like to ask you, because in general social science theory, what we find that there are some kind of lacunae in one theory, that's why another theory come into place, and then that theory is replaced. So, is that also true about this sociological theory, because uses gratification theory have some kind of lacunae and does not fulfill the requirement of theory, or what we can say the some kind of the things what the communicator or scholar want. Yeah, it has come individually by different communication scholar.
No, I think see, this is what the class was about was sociological theory.
Yeah.
Society is ever changing. The theory can never be static. The reality, and that's why I say theories may help us to make sense of what we are experiencing now.
Yeah, that is true, because
so that is why one theory came out of the realities, social realities of that particular time. That is why dependency theory had come up from uses and gratification. That doesn't mean that uses and gratification can be totally discarded, but you can both use simultaneously both the theories, or we might very soon have one theory is looking at a new theory coming out of dependency. So it is a very continuous process.
Okay.
And that is why when you asked me about books yesterday, I realized that if I give you a book which will have everything in that will not make a researcher completely knowledgeable in that area. See, one wants to look at only dependency theory, he has to read up, or she has to read up books on dependency theory extensively.
Okay. So that's why, because see, before industrial revolution, there was agricultural society, then come industrial society.
Yes.
Now, when service sector was prominent, then that kind of society. Now, information is taking over. So, information society is in concept, it's in place.
Okay.
So, the different society in different period of times, but the theory which are changing. So, how a scholar be careful in using such theory? Yeah, there are other dimensions needed to add in all this theory which you mentioned.
Yeah, that is where the taste is. When say I with my limited knowledge I start a research, so what I do is I think that this theory will be applicable to my research. I start with it, I test it, and then I find that there are various lacunae in that particular theory, so I have to accept another theory. That is why a real research take a lot of time. You cannot just sit down and type on your laptop and get out of it. So point is, when you have a theoretical framework, you believe that this is the best you can do right now, but your research might prove that this theoretical framework doesn't totally fit into your research. So you need to take a different framework too. In that particular framework, you might be giving up something but adding somewhere else. So research is not something which can be so easy, and you cannot actually. This is where the supervisor has a huge role to guide you through the various theories. Okay, this theory doesn't confirm, that theory doesn't confirm. But to start a research, you have to have extensive knowledge on the various theories, so that you can at least start thinking of which theory to apply. So this transition and then giving up or taking something will in fact come on the course of time of research.
Okay. Yesterday, one student asked me, what is the difference between media theory and communication theory? Very basic question,
Yes,
but it
yes.
need a bit elaboration. Can you elaborate?
Yeah, and the point is, when we say communication theory, we are talking about the entire communication process. As I said yesterday, interpersonal, intrapersonal, group communication, mass communication, verbal communication, non-verbal communication. But what media does is, media encompasses all this form of communication and gives you through a technology. So there is something called technology in between you and the communication. So this becomes more critical. Communication theory and media theory are related because media is a part of the entire communication process. And communication is a wider perspective of the entire thing. So it's almost like having a basket where you have 5 apples and you pick up one apple which seems to be bright and beautiful and you eat it, and that's media, and the rest of are there. But the basket is not full until and unless you put the apple back. That is, communication comprises of all the 5 apples and media is one of them. So the theories of communication obviously can be, all of them are related to media, but then you have to judiciously and very selectively with looking at the application process, you will have to pick up those theories. So there is a confusion, there will remain a confusion because it's not actually a confusion, it's basically how we handle the question. This is a very unique question. In fact, I had it when I was a MA scholar, you had it when you were an MA scholar, and the basic point is I started with communication because of that, and I am going towards media theory and communication theory because of that.
Okay, so it's I think a bit clear, but when we go deeper into it, it will be more clear. But one more things that to get students stuck is that our audience impact and audience research. In marketing, they do audience research, but in media, they do impact.
You have already told, and in fact you had explained itself. Marketing, you do audience research because those are your consumers. And you in communication we do impact research because you looking at the impact of that particular program on the audience we analyze. But here you have to make a audience, one audience a consumer of your product. So you have to look at the audience.
So, well friends, with this word we conclude the lecture. I thank all of you for watching the lecture. Tomorrow we will have another theory for discussion, that is political economy theory of mass communication, and we'll try to understand and try to explore the different facets of political economy theory. So I hope you will listen that also. So with this, thank you all of you again, and I also thank Professor Saswati Goswami for giving such an insightful lecture. Thank you very much.
Thank you.